Hello, my name is John Fairest, and today I want to talk to you about the wonderful process of signing into anything to do with our computers. Most of us will use probably something like a Microsoft or Google, and invariably, when we're using them, we're using something called the single sign-on process. Oh, it's that authenticator. And you know the time when you have forgotten your mobile phone. Well, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happens behind the scenes and maybe share with some of you the thoughts that we do encounter in the process that we have. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Azure, in this case, I'm talking about the Azure authentication methods. Azure is part of the Microsoft framework. And as you can see here, we're going to be talking about authentication methods. The AI 900 is a component of something called Microsoft Azure AI 900. And the content's taken from that, but hopefully I'm going to try and make it as easy to understand as possible. So a couple of things we're going to be looking at is single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, passwordless authentication, and Microsoft Entra ID. So let's play the slides and get straight into it. So here we have those three things that you'll be aware of. Now, single sign-on, in this instance, we're talking about Microsoft. Google has something similar. Multi-factor authentication. We've already covered the wonderful concept of the mobile. It's a wonderful device, isn't it? The passwordless authentication. In other words, where you've got the pattern or something like that on your screen and Microsoft Entra that you may have no idea about at all. So I want you to introduce you to the Azure authentication process because it is quite useful. It's something most of us use day in, day out. Microsoft Entra ID is used within the Azure system to potentially let you access software within a company setup that may be of some help. Who uses Microsoft Entra ID? Well, if you're working for maybe a larger company or larger organization, you may use it without even being aware of it. Single sign-on, you've logged in using your email potentially and a password, and you've got access to a whole group of software from that. And you might have actually gone to an app on your computer or your tablet, and you're going through the single sign-on process then. MFA, I'm sure you've come across it, but we'll be talking about it and the three factors, etc. So, what is authentication? Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user or service or device for granting access to resources. It requires presenting credentials to prove who you are. Note the word device. It can also be location as well. Azure authentication methods. Azure supports multiple authentication methods to balance security with user experience. So again, we see these keywords here that are connected to it. What is Microsoft Entra ID? Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management system. So you can see where identity access management come as IAM service that provides the secure authentication and authorization for applications and resources. So see, it shows us a whole load of things like that. I would say I just want to highlight the bound password thing. Okay, have you ever come across the policy side? The password doesn't meet the requirements. We now need a 20 odd letters password with capitals, numbers, hashtag special characters, whatever. Can be deeply frustrating. We'll be talking about that in a minute. So what does it offer? Azure, the Active Directory for your on-premises side of it. So the on-premise Active Directory also uses Microsoft Entra. you may find it's synchronizing between the cloud and on-premise environment. What does that mean? It means you might have a server at your office that also connects into the Microsoft setup. So it's trying to keep it simple but secure. Who uses Microsoft Entra ID? Okay, you're likely to have somebody who's an admin person. They may have Microsoft training to actually help deal with your role-based access control, RBAC. App developers, if I just move myself up there slightly, so we can see it manages user access policies, configures security settings. App developers add SSO functionality to apps. Oh, yes. Do we come across that when we're using single sign-on? Yes, we do, very regularly. And enables existing credentials. So maybe you got a new app that's come in, the IT app developers will help develop that app to meet the requirements of the Microsoft Entra ID. In other words, you're not going to have to constantly log in every time using multiple different passwords to get in theory. Managing your own identities and performing self-service actions. In other words, changing your passwords over where you can, where you know the criteria for the password reset, and you may require that two-factor authentication. Online service subscriptions. This is inclusive of something called Microsoft 365. Now, you may use, if you're a large company, or medium-sized company, Microsoft 365, you might have licenses for that, giving you access to Microsoft Office with your spreadsheets, your emails, your calendar, your Teams chats, the lot. That comes under something called the Microsoft 365 banner, Copilot with AI, etc. So these are aspects that are accessible through that. Azure portal, you may not even be aware you're using it when you log in, but you might see the word Azure, and that's part of that particular area. As an Azure student, I can assure you that it's fascinating, and if you want to know more, please make contact with me. Single sign-on. Single sign-on enables us to sign in once and use that credential to access multiple applications and resource from different providers that trust the initial authenticator. In other words, it's all part of what you might call a system. So one system, the SSO, gives you all that. It gives you that, in theory, better experience, simpler onboarding, etc., and centralized access control and management. There are obvious benefits to you as a user being able to sign to one thing using the same password, bum, 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 bum. You get into all your applications, don't forget to close them in between times. You can actually close them and then go and sign in on a different application. It won't be a problem. An example maybe of something like that is if you have Oracle for your expenses or signing, your holiday thing or whatever, you might find that that actually works off single sign-on through Microsoft as well. So Microsoft connects into this particular setup. And if you want to have a more of an understanding on that, we can provide that. So something called tokens that are used. You may come across that where you need a token to access. In basically, the tokens send data to and fro each other to actually get it through. But what I want to highlight here is that initial authenticator, it's back to your phone again. You're probably going to be using a phone to access that sort of form of information and to actually connect in some instances if SSO is not in use in that same way. You may have actually used that before now to actually get what you're after. Multi-factor authentication. Oh, deep joy. It's a process that many of us find frustrating because it relies on us always having our phone with us, that we've got the authenticator on, and that the phone does not break or there's no issues with it. It's always going to run 100%. One thing is if you've got Android, you can upgrade your phone, and in theory, you can clone the software from one phone to another. Therefore, if there is a disaster, it can be resolved. But the Entra MFA, so that's Microsoft Entra again, multi-factor authentication, uses phone calls, SMS, and the app notification codes. Be aware if you're using the codes, you may get like a minute or half a second, or it seems like half a second, to actually take the code from the phone and enter it in. So therefore, if you're using this sort of system, do yourself a favour, ensure that the device you're actually using and your phone are both close to each other, not in the other room. Not that that's ever happened to me, of course. Okay, MFA, three factors. The multi-factor authentication requirements and the multi-factor matters. Yeah, okay. Authentication may have its benefits. I feel that SSO has a stronger benefit because it helps us. But you'll often find you'll need your password, you'll need to have your phone because of the tokens and security keys. I think more people are probably more comfortable with the fingerprint scan than facial recognition. I tend to find that my face is not recognized so readily on the phone, but the fingerprint seems to work very well. Passwordless authentication options. Again, we are entering or trying to get away from passwords that could be copied. And I think there is um, strong aspects to our authentication system here of the biometric, i.e. your finger, and your biometric there, the authenticator and the Windows Hello for Business. Fido, that's not the dog. We possibly again use this quite a bit without necessarily realizing it. Bluetooth and NFC connectivity. When you take your phone to the checkout, you might be using NFC connectivity. Now, the chances are most people in the shopping aisle are not going to be trying to get into your phone. Okay, often when we have our Bluetooth connected, we'll have all these things coming up saying, here's a connection. Most of them we don't have anything to do with. We know we're not going to get into it. We're not that clever. But again, these are security things you can look up and maybe of some use from the passwordless authentication options. But certainly you'll probably find that Authenticator is the one you might come across. Biometrics get into different applications to actually run. And to be honest, we don't think too much about putting the finger on the device to actually say, yes, it's us, do we? Authentication method comparisons. You could say, although we've been talking about SSO, that the passwords only are possibly something that are becoming of less value to business and to various other factions or factors. This is the MFA and password becoming more used, I would argue. But certainly, this is the area that Microsoft are saying is their direction of always having your phone on you, never having anything going missing, always having it the way it is. But I would still say that the single sign-on authentication, i.e., the password, your email and password, may be something that is still in the background there as well. Conditional access. Now, this is quite important. One of the key reasons why I wanted to make this video. I would suggest that if you're in a strange location with a device, like another country, it can pick it up and all of a sudden you'll find your access is revoked with password changes. Be aware of it. It happens. The second thing is the device. If you change your device, then or put a new device on there, you may have to change your admin and be aware of you might have to talk to your help desk just to get a real clear understanding. I'm highlighting IT administration control, etc. The the catch-22 is often we don't know how many letters are required within the password, how many capital letters, how many special characters, and how many numbers. If you're in that situation, the strong argument is be prepared. If you're adding a new device, having helped a number of people over the last year just dealing with that position, particularly coming into a company, the location and device can be very, very um, interesting to deal with as a challenge. Identity is again a key factor in this. Um, some people rush into things rather than taking the advice, and these are things that I think take some time. Unexpected geographical locations. I'll be honest, I was abroad earlier on in the year, and that was the unexpected location that blocked my access to my system. And I thought, why? Well, yeah, because you're pinging off a different signal mask than you would normally do. Therefore, it must be, something that's completely inappropriate. Reset everything, every device you've got, which you have to go through that process. You may find it software as well. If you've got outdated software, it may block you in the end. So check on your access. You got best practice information there as well. So here's a summary of today's video. Lots of information about the conditional access, and some of these things you may have no knowledge of at all. The authentication methods, and just making sure that you've got your MFA, your the multi-factor authentication, potentially Google, potentially Microsoft, available. So, folks, I'm hoping this has been of some use if you've joined me on this video. Just to clarify, my background is that I am currently undertaking Microsoft Azure training. I've been doing the AI, which is why we're looking at AI 900 as part of this training. And also I've got experience of doing an MVQ3 in AI productivity, and some of these issues look at the challenges faced by organisations and hence the value of the video. So my name is John Fairest. Please reach out to me if this has been of any help, or if you want additional help in understanding some of these things to do with your organisation. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time to join me, and look forward to speaking to you on a future video.